predicting he will win Iowa for a third time in 2024. Former President Donald Trump spoke to a standing room only crowd at Sioux City's Orpheum Theatre this afternoon. His rally, scheduled to begin at 3 p.m., had supporters lined up outside the venue for hours before doors opened at noon. Those at the front of the entrance line had arrived as early as 5 o'clock on Saturday night. Many in attendance had seen the former president speak before, but there were a few things they were hoping to hear him touch on during his speech today.
What sort of topics do you hope that he might be covering in his speech today?
Border, our border, securing our borders, definitely. And then, of course, what's going on right now in Gaza and Israel and Palestine. And, of course, the war. So we got to get everything secured down.
Many roads and several buildings around the Orpheum were closed for that rally today. The former president and current GOP frontrunner began promptly at 3 o'clock today and addressed the crowd for nearly 90 minutes. KTIV's Connor Trett spent the day at the Orpheum and brings us a recap of Trump's speech to the crowd.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Former President Donald Trump held a campaign rally in Sioux City Sunday afternoon for his 8th stop in the Hawkeye State ahead of the Iowa caucus. The former president won the state in the 2016 and 2020 elections and boasted in his speech that he's the state's frontrunner in 2024.
I go around saying, of course we're going to win Iowa. And my people saying, you cannot assume that to this extent. Well, we are, I think we're up by 47 points or something, so we should. But forgetting that.
Former President Trump made his stances known on divisive issues like the southern border, renewable energy, inflation, and the current state of the Middle East and Ukraine.
If I were president, the attack on Israel would have never happened, wouldn't have happened. You know, we had Iran in a very good place. They were broke. Yeah, that's a good place. Now they're rich. Ukraine would never have happened. It would have never, ever happened. Putin would never have done it.
And during his speech, the former president pulled no punches, criticizing just about every major Republican candidate, including former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. One person, however, was seemingly left out, and that was his former Vice President Mike Pence. One person who did receive the most criticism is the sitting president, Joe Biden.
I will end Joe Biden's inflation disaster immediately, and we will quickly rebuild the greatest economy in the history of the world. We're going to go very quickly. I will make your tax cuts permanent and give you additional tax cuts, and that's what we're doing.
The former president also made his stance known on the current state of gender-affirming care for children and vowed to make a change to it if elected.
Under a Trump administration, gasoline-fired engines will be allowed, but child sexual mutilation will be not allowed. I will also sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children.
In Sioux City, Connor Trett, KTIV News 4.
The former